Hello, Donnie here. I'm going to go a little bit more into the macrobiotic diet. This is from the Global Crisis website that I'm designing. Essentially, eventually, it will happen. So, I need to produce a collective of people that are consistent and believe in these ideas of change and these peaceful protests of art, utilizing that with education to try to, shed light on issues as a, giving back to the earth. So this next diagram that I did was based also off the macrobiotic philosophy, and it's a diagram. Okay, and the nine steps of dissension, where the memory is contained in the food we eat. Okay, the infinity symbol that we talked about, the portal via the breath, the air that leads to the mouth, that essentially creates this polarity that you see. You've got one direction this way, another direction the opposite. That's like two magnets on each side of that decision point. Like I said, to be or not to be. Okay, there's an energy between opposite held magnets here. The energy that you feel in between those magnets, this is what it is. It's in our electrical field in our body. When we make the creative decision to be or not to be, do I want to be in alignment with nature through the foods and the way of preparing them, or not to be in alignment? That is the question. Okay, so restoring our relationship with the creative force has to do with the food we eat. Food contains the memory required for ascension and descension. So, 9 steps of descension found within the body, because we're going to compare this drawing, which is a skeletal of the canon of man that I drew the other day for y'all, just right on camera live. The canon of man looks like that. I've got a painting on my timeline of a more artistic version, but this is for the education value. The void at the top is the infinity symbol. You see the arrow pointing to the next portal of introduction of these foods that lead into that spiral and allow us to get circulation all the way down the body to the head via the central nervous system. Okay, so that's the canon, and this is kind of the skeletal of what's happening, the 9 levels of descension and ascension. So light, this is essentially descension, these steps. Light allows us to see and become conscious. The sun illuminates the ocean, showing us a solid form, the land. So that has to do with, that has to do with basically consciousness and vision. The polarization and vibration is what we talked about, where the directions inevitably go opposite direction. One descends and one ascends if we have this process in our body working correctly. Liquid becomes solid, and that's how we have the earth. This is kind of like the final step of descension. Vibration becomes light. We get the sun, which is like an inner creation, the solar plexus, Dantian. It's called in Oriental martial arts, the area where the chi is stored. Okay, inner creation. This is again the pulsation that is also the spiral that I showed you on the canon, but from an actual perspective of what it looks like in the body, it's a pulsation. Ironically, it kind of resembles intestines, that lead to the pancreatic area. So this pulsation occurs all the way into the blood again, which represents the earth. Here's the directions: west, east, north, south. These are also connected by an infinity. If you look at this infinity sign that I've done, essentially the point is to make this dissension process in our mind and in our body, through the detoxification of these foods, So this is pretty imperative, and you're welcome to freeze it and kind of take notes on it. I've put these drawings down mainly as a model for a reference point, and this is one of the drawings that I did when I went to school for fine art. I pretty much exhausted all the classes and then just started doing it myself eventually. So the polar opposites, yin and yang, right here, okay, that we talked about have to do with understanding the duality of cooking, culinary art, what the body needs to continually have this process. That's true culinary art. That's what these master chefs from Japan understand, but don't give it to you in kind of an info cooking commercial or whatever. So you got the two polar opposites going out here. You have sun becomes gas and you get the clouds. That's another transmutation of chemical structure that happens miraculously in the atmosphere and in our body. Gas becomes liquid through the cloud transformation into either rain or snow or sleet, many different things. And solid is earth through the liquid dissension process, okay? So these are the 9 steps of dissension, and we'll go to this drawing now, which is basically the process of internalizing the creation through the food that we're eating. This is the process of the skeletal understanding that I presented, again explaining it in a different way, but the same skeletal understanding. We maintain ourselves by the food with the total memory, which would be whole and not partial cereal grains. Research the ones that are healthy for you. To be a total human, when this food is not complete, we do not contain the total memory. We must stop consuming the food which disrupts this flow. So when it disrupts the flow, it comes off here where it's supposed to be entering into the nucleus, okay, right up here, and bypasses the system of descension, circulation, and re-entry into the blood through the central nervous system right here. So it comes out to the side and has a broken infinity, which is due to a lack of balance. You don't have that, oceanic balance within you. We then internalize creation. Okay, so this would be consistent to me, the internalizing creation here, with the idea of the kingdom of heaven being within you, because it's hard to understand how we can establish the kingdom of heaven within us, but if we can establish a physiological way to understand having that bliss, or what the Buddhists call nirvana, in terms of the way we live our life and living a long and happy life, whatever the main goal is, it's important to be pliable to these suggestions. So after it condenses into the nucleus and enters the body and creates the dissension process into the blood right here, the blood's all the way down here where the actual entry into the blood happens. Food needs to be digested completely so it can circulate through the entire body. Well, that's done through mastication of these whole grains, chewing incessantly until it becomes like a dal soup from Ayurvedic cuisine, India, that's very assimilatable. That's why, there's some record longevity practices happening in India with people living to be inordinate ages. This is done through uniting the food with the blood, okay? This is the infinity symbol we're looking for. This also relates to the brain, which influences our mental state. We have all these mental problems in the world, and if people would get back to this infinity symbol through this process of returning to who we are, we wouldn't have to resort to these medical companies that are, basically taking all our money, and utilizing it for the salaries of these MDs that don't even believe what they're doing is right. So making people dependent on these drugs that are side effect riddled with, different chemicals. So the mind wants instant gratification. I told you about coming over here to this broken infinity symbol. The mind wants instant gratification. These foods and these cooking shows need to be, monitored or regulated, because they all talk about the same thing: cooking these great foods that taste so good and they're so delicious. So that means they're good because they taste good. I want you to apply that to a few metaphors in life and see if it really holds validity in any scrutiny evaluation, So it's not about making food and having a presentation value that looks pretty. That's an illusion. That's the rabbit hole that we need to, decide and make that decision if we're going to go into the real way of eating, or are we just going to consider it a trivial thing and plague our children and our generations to follow haphazardly, so this is the alternative. This might be a message from the elders of Mayan and certain cultures that have predicted 2012. I don't concern myself with that because I need time to be at peace and to meditate and to be quiet, and I need times to present these things. So that's the next drawing. We already talked about the 30 molars coinciding with 30 vertebrae, and I'm not positive it's 30. It's around that number. Chewing is the most sacred form of meditation, activating the central nervous system that brings that return that I told you about right here. This is representative of that return process through the central nervous system, pulling this back up to what? The brain, the mind, to be able to cleanse that and have a fresh perspective on life, So if you want to take notes or freeze any of these, we've already talked about it. This is one that you haven't seen. It was pretty much one of the first portals, but it's very basic and can show you what is actually happening there. So if you pause your screen, you're going to get this. You might have to zoom in on it a little bit to get all the subject matter in, but just pause it and then you can take notes and show me how you have evaluated the commentary and the artwork. So you can do that with this one as well, the diagram, if you want to copy and look at it. Okay, so the macrobiotic way of restoring our relationship with natural law through cooking and eating the proper foods. That's essentially what we're doing. So we're creating this symbiosis that I'll talk about on the next stage. Thank you.